But today we are going to analyze or do the autopsy of, so to say, a very famous British journalist, Piers Morgan.
How many children have you killed?
Piers, Israel is not killing children. Israel is not killing children. Hamas is using them as human
Israel is killing
shields.
children every single day.
Journalism has played such a big part in what is ongoing.
And I think that has now alerted the publics in Britain, in many parts of Europe, as you are seeing every day. Their governments are also responding to the public sentiment.
Thank you very much, and I am here with my program Sharp Edge, and I have a few guests. One of them is here in studio with me, and a couple of guests will join on the video call on this program of Sharp Edge with Gaza Massacre Continues. But today we are going to analyze or do the autopsy of, so to say, a very famous British journalist, Piers Morgan. And his shows, especially his recent show with the Israeli ambassador in the United Kingdom.
Journalists will be allowed to get into Gaza as long as there is no risk for them. And you know
It's
that
got nothing to do with you, the risk to journalists.
that's
not your problem.
From my point of
You don't have
view,
to- it's
from
not
my
your
point of view,
problem.
once there is no risk to their life, I'm sure
Oh,
they'll
what a
be
load
allowed
of
to get in.
flannel, Ambassador. Don't treat us like idiots.
And we want to see the travel of Piers Morgan from "Do you condemn Hamas?" to "How many children have you killed?" So I'm going to open the program today with introduction to my colleague, Maryam Deniyal, who's traveled from Luton. She's an activist. She will introduce herself. And Dr. Akmal Makhdum, who is a very famous British Pakistani psychiatrist, author, and activist. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And let me introduce my other guest, Dr. Akmal Makhdum, who is a psychiatrist, as I said, and he has a keen eye on the human psychology. So both of you, I'm going to play this video, which you will see on your screen, and then we'll discuss about it. Cut 1.
Will you now take the opportunity to condemn what Hamas did on October the 7th? Final, I only ask you one more time. To my simple question, was what happened on October the 7th a terror attack?
If you refuse to call the bombing
Okay.
the bombing of
right, I
Dresden
tried.
as a terror attack,
I tried.
then why?
I've got to leave it there.
Is that not hypocritical?
I've asked a lot of guests these two questions, and I'll be curious about your answer. Would you condemn Hamas for what they did? So, just for the record, do you condemn what Hamas did that day?
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
I condemn the genocidal conditions
That wasn't my
to
question.
stop people dying, Piers.
But that wasn't my question.
No, we do not.
So, Maryam, you saw this video, and last year, since 7th October 2023, actually, we have been plagued by this question. Every single show that you go to, and this question was asked especially to Muslim guests. Do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn 7th October? As if everything started from 7th October. That was the creation day. So what do you see what's happening now, starting from the 7th October 2023?
I think it's almost quite comical that a lot of journalists want to start it from the 7th of October. That's been their focal point, not the fact that colonization and the occupation has been ongoing with the Palestinian people since 1948. And something they always try doing as well, they only just mention Gaza or West Bank, but they will never mention Gaza in Palestine, because they don't want you to view the whole place as Palestine, as Palestinian land. But it's the same question of, do you condemn Hamas? Like, that's the only thing that's going on when there's an actual genocide occurring. And the same people that ask these questions have said nothing about how many babies or children have actually been brutally murdered in Gaza and Palestine that we've seen on our screens so often.
No, that's true. But the focus of today's program mainly is other than this genocide that's going on, is that how the journalism in the world, in the Western media, and in particular the journalism of Piers Morgan as a human being who was told again and again the atrocities and the killing and the genocide that was going on, and he did not understand it. He did not show any compassion or any capacity to have compassion for those innocent civilians died, and his moral compass was only on one side. Yes, atrocities were perpetrated on Israelis as well as Palestinians, but as a journalist, one would, or as a human being, and that is the question. So let me ask Dr. Akmal Makhdum, who has been a psychiatrist and has a keen eye on the human psychology. Dr. Makhdum, thank you for joining us. And you saw this clip, and it'd be great to hear from you from the psychiatric perspective of the personality of Piers Morgan in the context of a Gaza massacre.
Well, the thing is that because I haven't assessed him psychiatrically or psychologically, so I would be constrained to make any diagnoses. But from whatever I know and whatever I've seen, the thing is that I look at it in its totality and its context, because Piers Morgan by himself as an individual isn't there on the television. He's an employee of a very large news network. He's been part of that news network for many, many years. And if you look at all his career, you will see many ups and downs and many question marks and many good things about him and many questionable things about him. So basically, I look at him not as the person, not as an individual, but as part of a large corporation, large media corporation, which has its own editorial policy, it has its own financial interests. And so I think that whatever Piers says is not what Piers says, what it appears to be what Piers may be saying. So I do not think that it will be fair on him or fair on us for him to be looked at as an individual. I think we have to look at him as a spokesperson of a large conglomerate, a financial conglomerate, a media conglomerate, and what are the social, political, historical, financial dynamics behind it. Because I don't think that we can look at him as an individual here.
Well, however, having said that, you cannot take a human being out of that particular role that he plays, because there is a contrast is very, very naked there when he grills his guests, especially of Muslim background. He uses phrases like, "Oh, that's a bollocks," "Oh, that is a nonsense," and he interjects every 5 seconds or 10 seconds. It doesn't allow the argument of his Muslim guests to build up, and interrupts the train of thoughts and train of conversation. But when it comes to a non-Muslim, whether it's a guest online or in his studio, he is the most polite. So I'm going to put another cut too right now, and a small video. His recent interview with the Israeli ambassador, although here he appears quite changed, but still he did not use those kind of phraseology that he's very well known of when he confronts the Muslim guests.
But you said there were 50,000 Hamas. Others have put the total figure at around 25,000, which begs the question, if after 18, 19 months now, you have been waging this ferocious war against 25, 26,000 terrorists, and you still haven't defeated them, your strategy is failing. How many children have you killed?
Piers, Israel is not killing children. Israel is not killing children. Hamas is using them as human
Israel is killing
shields.
children every single day. And what you're trying to do is be very weaselly with your words.
No, I'm not.
The truth is, you are killing a lot of children. You would argue you're doing.
why it's caused?
Hang on, let me
because
finish.
Hamas is using them as human shields, and you know
Let me
that.
finish my question to you. You are killing a lot of children on a daily basis. That is indisputable. My interesting question for you is, how come you know exactly how many Hamas terrorists you've killed, but you have no idea how many children you've killed?
Maryam, you saw the video earlier on, and you heard from Dr. Makhdum So what do you make up of this kind of a journalism?
I think journalism has played such a big part in what is ongoing, to where people have said that the hospitals have been Hamas run, and then all of a sudden it's been okay to bomb hospitals. And Piers is complicit in what he has said and what has been happening. But what I also find quite comical is that the way that he's talking to the Israeli ambassador is that if someone on the Palestinian side, if we were to talk in that way, he disregards it, he paints them as aggressive. He tries saying that he's invited the most amount of Palestinian voices, but he's also invited a lot of pro-Israel voices onto the show who have made very, very clear their view on Palestine and the genocide.
But the question is, why is he changing his stance now? This video that you watched now, he keeps on asking, how many children have you killed, to the Israeli ambassador, where he was like a little mouse in front of this ambassador just a few months ago.
I think we're seeing a sort of general switch happen now where people who were very open to being pro-Israeli are now almost suddenly having this realization of, oh, hang on, this is actually a really bad thing. I don't know if they weren't expecting it to keep on going for this long, but also it could maybe be a financial protective stance of where now if he says something that is supportive of Palestine, he's going to get a lot of Palestinian supporters on his side. But him now asking, well, how many babies have died, doesn't get rid of everything that he has said and how he has really played into this narrative of Israel has a right to defend itself. And he's really, really been pushing that over the last 2 years.
Right. Okay, let me ask Dr. Makhdum that how is this the change of heart? Is it a true change of heart, or these are the economic reality? Because Piers Morgan, from do you condemn Hamas to now, how many children have you killed? And again, and I think I counted at least 5, 6, 7 times he asked this phrase, which is really, frankly speaking, we never heard him with that kind of a ferocity that he showed to the Israeli ambassador. And although, having said that, still there were some unasked questions which were very pertinent as a follow-up questions. So, Dr. Makhdum, what do you think that by the video that you just watched, do you think that there is a genuine change of heart and Piers Morgan is not convinced that some form of genocide or atrocities are being committed there by Israel, or it is another ploy of him to gather more views or more financial gain from being a slightly pro-Palestinian?
Yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is that let's separate journalism in England, in America, from journalism in the Middle East and journalism in Palestine and journalism in Israel. The thing is that when we talk of journalism, we need to separate that, because every journalism has a political mother and a financial mother behind it. So when we talk of journalism, let's not call it journalism, let's call it British journalism. So there's a difference between Spanish journalism, the Brazilian journalism, or the Nicaraguan journalism compared to what the Dutch journalism is. So the thing is that if you see, I look at this particular model like the Bosnia model, that for months and months and for years, the Bosnian genocide was happening. People were condemning those who were condemning genocide, and the media obviously playing the political game. And when it came to the political decision makers deciding that this was not allowed, when the political decision makers decided that it was to be allowed, that genocide should carry on, then obviously it carried on and the media followed suit. When they decided that it should stop now, the media then changed tack. So similarly, I see the same model happening there, which is that, as long as this is going to be allowed when the political masters are saying, let the murder carry on. This will carry on. The moment the political masters change their mind or appear to change their mind, there are a few because the thing is that I do not want to give Piers Morgan, a very brilliant journalist, any independence in this regard or this agency that he's able to dictate and create the content. I totally refuse to believe, unless it is proven otherwise, that he has total independence of what he says.
Dr. Makhdum, did you notice or detect any humanity and compassion, especially in the early days of this war, towards the plight of Palestinian, and not asking the question that what led to 7th October's atrocious attack? Yes, it wasn't a very pleasant sight to watch, and no innocent person should die anywhere in the world. But it didn't come in a vacuum. There was a legacy of Nakba from 1948, and then almost 57 years of oppression. But my question to you would be that you must have watched a number of his interviews with a number of people, including Muslims.
All of them.
Did you see any compassion or any empathy towards the plight of those innocent Palestinian citizens?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I looked at this whole thing as like every other journalist who works for similar organizations who've got an editorial policy. They've got there are large corporations which are owning these media outlets, and they determine what that policy is going to be. And the thing is that this expectation that a person from the West with part of a large right wing or I would say, well, yeah, let's leave it at right wing organization, with all their political and financial interests. It is actually quite okay for him to behave like that, because that is what the organization behaves like it. And I do not expect any compassion from such people. I do not want to make them into any kind of saviors or heroes. They are spokespeople of their masters. And I think that is what we must accept and recognize. And that's all I must say, that this idea that somehow one personality which is created as a personality, which is built up as a personality because of the media, these are not real heroes. The real heroes are somewhere else.
Let me ask Maryam on this particular point, what Dr. Makhdum has suggested. So you believe that it is the background of Piers Morgan which is speaking, which is a very Murdoch propelled career push that he had. He started from the Sun and then the News of the World and so on and so forth. Do you think that there is a larger agenda there by a particular media mogul, which is very Islamophobic?
On that aspect, I don't know because I'm not behind the scenes there, but what we can see is that a large amount of Islamophobia has gone unchecked by a lot of his guests, and he says sort of like, I don't play favourites, I don't take any sides, but I think a lot of us have heard that a lot of a side has been taken over the last few years, and now it sounds like he has switched sides all of a sudden. But I think the point that the doctor made on British media is it is actually quite different. It likes to be sensationalized, and you find that Piers Morgan does do that with his guests, where he does want to wind them up. He wants to get that soundbite. He wants to get that reaction, and that's a negative one from people that have come on to talk and be pro-Palestinian and actually talk for the Palestinian people, as opposed to the ones that have come supporting Israel, where he's been a lot more complacent with them. In fact, I think this is the first time we've actually seen him talk to anyone pro-Israeli in this type of style. So I wonder if also this is going to be a gateway for other groups in the media and other main national channels to actually criticize Israel on national TV openly. And I don't agree with with a lot of Islam, but I do also wonder what's going to actually come out from this, because it's almost taken a lot of us by quite a bit of shock that he's had this 180, this supposed 180.
Yeah. Well, that's very wise, and thank you very much for that. We'll take a short break, and then I have two journalists, one from Indian background and another journalist from America joining us on a video call, and we'll continue our conversation. So thank you very much to you, Maryam, and Dr. Makhdum for your attending this this program on a very short notice. Warm welcome to all my guests, Maryam Deniyal in the studio, and Raza Rumi, who is a very famous British-American journalist from New York. Right now, he's a professor of humanity and law, and he has a keen eye on the world politics, especially the journalistic flair of a number of journalists who are in Pakistan, India, and America, and in the British politics. So, Raza, we could not get you online fully because of the technical issues, but you were watching this video, and very warm welcome to you on this show.
Thank you.
Yeah. As you know, this show is primarily focusing on the journalism or the impartial or partial journalism of Piers Morgan. And you saw the two videos from Piers Morgan's travel from "Do you condemn Hamas?" to "How many children have you killed?" To the Israeli ambassador, that in his recent interviews, he was really grilling the Israeli ambassador. So what do you make up of Piers Morgan and his journalistic credentials and in this entire saga that's going on in this genocide?
No, I think he's of course a reputable journalist, and he's followed by so many across the world. But in this particular context, in the context of reporting on Gaza and the barbaric destruction of Gaza, unfortunately, he has not been siding with the voiceless and the powerless. From day one, he has been trying to whitewash the crimes of Israeli state and the complete disregard for the violation of international laws, because Israel has virtually violated every international human rights treaty, whether Geneva Conventions or other instruments that it has signed on, that the world community agrees on. You can't stop food to a population, you can't starve them, you can't bomb civilians, you can't bomb hospitals, but you name it, Israel has done everything. And unfortunately, journalists such as Piers Morgan and many others, by the way, he's not the only one, they've been trying to whitewash, and their focus has been exclusively on Hamas. Hamas is not a government. Hamas is not a state. Palestinians don't have an army. It's a disproportionate contest here. And you can't report on it like an ordinary war. It's one-sided aggression against a people and a complete will and determination to erase them, to push them out from their own land and virtually annihilate them. Unfortunately, there's no other way to look at it.
Yeah, but you would agree that as a journalist, the most important thing for any journalist is to tell the stories to the world. You need to, the accuracy is very important, impartiality is very important, empathy and compassion and humanity are very important. What took so long to, as you said, reputable journalists to actually to bring those basic elements of human or humanity in him, to start asking questions? Because one can see that there is definitely some kind of a change going on, whether it is in his personality or whether the people that he actually represents from his media organization. So why do you think that there is a kind of a sudden shift, so to say, that he's acknowledging that there is some form of genocide and atrocities?
Dr. Qureshi, I think, I would actually make a larger argument. What has happened is that if you have also must have noticed, and I'm sure you are talking about it, that many Western European countries have also started, you know, complaining about Israel's conduct. You know, the same countries that were completely blind to the atrocities in the for more than a year, or blind or just like paying lip service, are now at least showing some concern. I think there are a number of reasons going on there. Well, first of all, is that international public opinion is shifting from the initial horrors of Hamas attack. And by the way, I don't condone what Hamas did on October 7. No civilian anywhere should be touched, whether it's Israeli or Palestinian. But the response of Israel was so disproportionate and so barbaric, and that it stops. There is no way that Israel is intending to stop that, and I think that has now alerted the publics in Britain, in many parts of Europe, as you are seeing every day. Their governments are also responding to the public sentiment. The second issue is that this went beyond targeting Hamas or getting the hostages out. Getting hostages was never the intent of Israeli government, and now there's enough evidence out there which says that they were never serious about these hostages. They used them as a plank, as a ruse to bomb and kill a group of people, but they were never serious about it, because there were many occasions where there could have been a deal on hostages, but Israel was actively or covertly sabotaging it. So they want this land. They want these people out. That has been the stated objective of the right-wing politicians in Israel. Now, this alerts, how can European Union and European countries talk about human rights or claim that they are the champions of freedoms if they are silent and blind towards what's going on? They have been exposed as well in this conflict. I don't think it's only Israel, by the way. It's the Western media, it's the Western governments, it's the European Union, it's the entire Western liberal order that is basically dead because they have been unable to stop an aggressor from killing and destroying a people, a group of people, which is, there's no other way but to call it a genocide.
I think you're right, and you brought a very interesting point that somehow in a number of Western governments, there appears to be a change of heart and a change of mind, and slowly and gradually, whether it's internal pressure or whether the catastrophic Holocaust-type atrocities on Palestinians, but something is definitely changing. I will bring Maryam Deniyal, my colleague here, and my guest here, who's activist for Black Muslim women and very, very vocal for the defender of the Palestinian and very pro-Palestinian activist, which is actually pro-humanity. So, Maryam, you heard what Professor Raza Rumi has stated. Do you have any take on that?
I think when he was mentioning especially how there has been a shift within the Western media, I think almost that the West wasn't expecting this to go for so long, as I mentioned slightly earlier. But also, even though the Western media are now saying more and politicians are now saying more, what is actually still being done? Because I know in my town, like about a month ago, there's an arms factory, and Keir Starmer came down and tried criticising protesters. But what I find that the media will never say about the protests that are ongoing is how diverse there are and how this isn't a Jewish problem. There's literally a Jewish bloc at the protest that no one mentions. But you'll hear that the Zionists will mention the word blood libel, but you literally have Orthodox Jews standing by, modern Jews standing by Ashkenazi Jews, that are all standing and saying that they are against what's happening. You've literally heard of people doing the same thing on the ground in Israel. We've heard about people literally mobilizing in large numbers, whether it be in England, whether it be the freedom petition, whether it be people going to settlements in West Bank, but none of this is mentioned in the media. In fact, it's restricted heavily.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because there is this narrative building which the media uses, and unfortunately, there's not much for the Muslim media to give their narrative or their side of the story. And even then, there are some Muslim media in English, but unfortunately, they are not really that potent enough. And whenever the Muslim guests are brought to any of these Western media, it all looks very biased and straight. I have a very interesting question to ask Raza. Raza, we're just going to play this small, actually, segment of this Piers Morgan interview with the Israeli ambassador in the United Kingdom, where the Israeli ambassador, time and again, and you must have heard it many times, talks about the Gaza war, genocide to the World War II, and the narrative is there's that because in the World War II, the Allied forces absolutely annihilated German cities, so that's why they should be allowed. So I'm just going to play this short video for a minute, cut 7.
Is that your strategy isn't working. There's no clear plan for what happens at the end of all this. Hamas is still clearly alive and well and thriving. Yes, you've killed another one of their leaders today, but you killed his brother, who was the architect of October the 7th months ago, and that didn't seem to make any difference to Hamas's ability to continue engaging in battle with you. And the argument remains, how many Palestinian civilian innocent lives, women and in particular children, are you prepared to kill as you continue going after Hamas when it doesn't appear that you're winning that battle, that strategy is failing?
Piers, how many Japanese children were killed under American attacks, and how many German children were killed under UK attacks in the Second World War? Listen, I mean, if you want to play a fair game, you need to understand how Western armies operated in the past. Israel is not anywhere near to the American attacks on Tokyo that killed 100,000 civilians, and not anywhere near to what the UK was doing in the Second World War.
So you heard that, Raza, and this narrative again and again, that as if Gaza war is like World War II. 67 million people died in World War II. Out of them, 27 million were Russians alone, and pretty much 1.5 million Indians, with Muslims and Hindus and Indian Christians. But why is this, that this narrative has not been really challenged, that this is not World War II? This is not a war between the two armies. And I was very intrigued that there was no follow-up question or a rebuttal or retort by Piers Morgan. You have a keen eye on not only journalism but also on the world history. So could you please solve this riddle?
So he did say whataboutery. I mean, that was that's all that he could muster at that moment. But I think it is. I mean, Dr. Qureshi, again, Piers Morgan represents this particular strand of thinking that Palestinian lives don't matter. You know, these are people, and that is an issue of racism as well. If you remember when Ukraine was invaded by Russia, and there were Western reporters going there, and they were saying, oh, they are just like us. They're white people. They watch Netflix. They have iPhone tablets. Oh, how can Russia do that to them? How could Russia invade a country where white people with blue eyes and blonde hair lived? Now, that is something, as we know, there's a whole dimension of racist ideology that governs not just the public mind, but at some level, policy as well. Of course, there have been changes and improvements in the last few decades. But if you remember, there's a whole history of colonialism. And Palestine, unfortunately, the issue that we face today is a legacy of the British colonialism. And since you're there in the UK, that is also something important to remember, that it is the Brits who caused this mess. It is the Brits who caused this mess in Pakistan and India as well. And they deliberately left these flashpoints so that these black or brown and in quote unquote inferior people can keep on fighting and killing each other. And that is something that we are also witnessing in Israel. Now it is backed by the might of the United States, by Western European countries, and it thinks that it can do anything in the world because somehow everybody is responsible. All these people are responsible for the horrors that the Jewish people faced during World War II and before that. The Palestinians were not responsible for that. Those who were responsible for that are the very people who are now, out of guilt or Middle East politics or oil or whatever, are now backers of Israel. And that is what Piers Morgan forgot to mention. And the biggest argument is that the Palestinians are not organized like a state. They don't have army, they don't have nukes, they don't have tanks, they don't have a whole armor. In fact, they are hapless people being relentlessly bombarded and killed by one aggressive power. And sadly, the world watches in silence until recently. I mean, it is somewhat encouraging that people are now talking about it, but I still am waiting to see whether it would translate into some concrete action or not.
I mean, it's very difficult not to agree with you on all of the points that you mentioned. One of the things that you mentioned was the colonialism, and it appeared that there can be a neo-colonialism that's going on because this humanity appears to have a white color, and with that, I just saw our colleague, an Indian journalist, Vimal Joshi, is here, and he's very keenly watching. We're trying to connect with him. Vimal, thank you very much for joining us. And so we are actually really on the fag end of the program, and basically we were focusing on the impartiality of journalism and the narrative building and opinion building, which is weaponized against a particular religion, in this way, Islam or Palestinian. So what are your views about the journalism that you've seen so far from the Western journalism on Gaza massacre and Holocaust, and especially the Piers Morgan show that you watched the video earlier on?
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me, Dr. Qureshi. I saw the clips that you showed in your show, and as a journalist, I believe as an anchor, Mr. Piers Morgan is supposed to, give an unbiased and non-partisan platform for the guests who come on his show. I mean, that's a prerequisite for any debate, any meaningful debate to happen. I mean, be it in a TV studio or otherwise. And as a journalist, the opinion that you express explicitly, particularly the respected journalists like Piers Morgan. So explicitly, when you express an opinion, that is likely to have a ripple effect across the society. So one has to be very careful about how explicitly you share your opinion. Having said this, I mean, he, like all of us, is entitled to have an opinion. He's entitled to take sides, or he may feel strongly about a particular ideology. But it doesn't mean that one can, push it down the throats of the guests who come on his show. That is, what was very evident when I saw those clips.
Of power there, it so appears to extend a particular narrative. So this abuse of power by a, so to say, famous British journalist Piers Morgan is a form of a racism against Muslims and Palestinians, and probably incriminating him into this genocide, which is actually very well documented in the United Nations and the International Criminal Court. What are your views when you hear all about this, that the humanity has a color, there is a neo-colonialism, and there is a stark polarization of the global attitude against the Muslims? What do you say to that?
I think I go by the coin of intersectional activist, educator, and I think something that we can also see as well, like a lot more people have woken up to Palestine. Palestine didn't just automatically become under occupation. in the last 2 years. It has been under an occupation since 1948. In fact, colonization is still going on there. But I think something that we do need to see is really the Ummah come together, not just for Palestine, but also for our Sudanese siblings, for our Yemeni siblings, for our siblings in the Democratic Republic of Congo and the Yagirs. We need to really be fighting against all oppression together because it's all linked in. And the media really does tie in with all of these. So when we hear Piers Morgan talking, he will also talk about migrants that are coming to England, which is fueling that the problem in England is that people who need a safe place to go are coming, rather than the fact that we need to tax the rich and actually share out the wealth that we do have so it reaches the communities it needs to. What we're also not hearing about is how many people have been arrested for standing 10 toes down on justice. Even here in London where we sit, there are people that have been arrested for protesting Gal Gadot's filming. He's been known as a massive Zionist who's actually served in the IDF force. We've had people be arrested for protesting outside of Downing Street.
Yeah. There's some kind of a gagging on a free speech.
It really started from the police crime and sentencing bill that came a few years ago, and part of that was the public nuisance order. So you can now get arrested for conspiracy to commit a public nuisance, or if you're in the streets, that's a public nuisance, when really the people that are causing public nuisance are people like Piers Morgan, who have been uttering so many words and so many people on who really are dangerous to have, who will say things about Muslim, but also in our Ummah, we need to address racism that also happens as well.
But I think it is not a Muslim issue, Islamic issue. It is an issue of humanity, and that is what we stand for. I think I have to then ask you, then, Maryam, that what is the future of human rights, the sloganeering in the British Isles and in Europe and the Western world, something that they really trumpeted throughout, and which must be safeguarded in the United Kingdom, the universal human values, the egalitarian values, and especially the freedom of expression. And if you see the gagging of that going so far as you very ably mentioned, do you think it is going to be a huge black dot on the reputation of the British society?
I think, to be honest, I don't really know. It's a funny one because there's so much happening at the moment. But what I do think we need to remember is that we are carrying on the work from the global south, and no one is voiceless. And one thing that we should be focused on doing is amplifying voices of those who are oppressed, from Palestine to Sudan, and also in spaces in media where we really do need to highlight this and share what is happening. But I do feel like there is a tide coming. I feel like BLM's really started up a thing of people actually waking up a bit more. And with the Palestinian movement, people are waking up more. And it sounds funny, I see a revolution coming that's not being started in England and the West. It's being started by those in countries such as Kashmir, such as people in the Congo, such as people who are rising up in Palestine. And we have to carry on the work here because we have the capacity to do it, while also still looking after ourselves. And I think it's so important that we actually remember to come together as a community to do this. So when we have someone that does get arrested for protesting, there's something called arrestee support, where people will gather together outside whichever station they've been. And so when they come out to that love and support, and they tend to come out shouting Free Palestine, even though they've just been arrested.
Yeah, you're right. So, well, thank you very, very much for your contribution. And we really admire your courage, really, as a Muslim woman to stand up and against all odds.
So also,
yes, thank you. We thank you to Vimal and Raza, who unfortunately due to technical issues could not stay on with us. But one thing is very clear, that Piers Morgan, he has really dented his reputation as a journalist. And unfortunately, he's traveled from, again, I repeat, from Do You Condemn Hamas, which he really made a mockery of the interviewing skills of many anchors, to now, how many children have you killed? And one wonders that why did it take him so long when 54,000 people were killed, only then to realize that actually there were Palestinian children. They were also human beings who were killed because, and it's not that Piers Morgan didn't know what's going on. He knew about it because almost every week he will do a program. He will bring people around the world, including very famous Jewish scholars, Jewish commentators, and he had everything in his possession to understand that the Palestinian plight and also that how many innocent Palestinians are being killed, especially children and women and medics, and he never thought about it. This sudden shift in his stance is still very suspicious, so we don't know what is actually is there, but definitely Piers Morgan appears to extend the narrative of destruction, narrative of genocide, and he has really dented himself as a human being and as a journalist hugely. With that, we say thank you very, very much for tuning in and watching this program. Your comments and feedback and encouragement mean a lot to us. And with that, we say thank you very much again to my guests, Maryam, and those who joined us via video link. And until my next program, I'm Sohail Qureshi from quewsnews.